Thank you, Lorrie, for this very interesting keynote. We welcome Eric Leandri, who is the CEO of Qwant, and Marie-Hélène Zurko from MIT, who will chair this panel.
Yeah. Merci. Am I on? Great.
Sure.
Good morning. Eric will first give a brief introduction and a little bit on his stance on privacy and security. And then we will start taking questions from the audience and from Twitter on the topic.
So thank you very much for that brief introduction, which is more than complete. And hello, everybody. My name is Eric Leandri. I'm chairman and co-founder of Qwant. And Qwant is a search engine. As you know, certainly my main competitor very well. Yes, we are a B2C search engine, so we just give you an answer from the web. The most important difference is that we are a privacy-based search engine. So we have created Qwant with one idea in mind, the Article 12 of the human rights at the United Nations. And the Article 12, for the people who don't know what it is about, it's a right for privacy. So the whole idea of Qwant is to give a search engine, a real search engine, an European-based search engine, who gives you access to the whole web without tracking you at all. So that means that the difference with some of the let's say, meta search engine that you know who take care of your privacy is that you don't need to read a third-party privacy policy on Qwant because we have our own infrastructure, we own all our servers and even our firewall. So when you arrive on Qwant, even myself have no clues who you are, and nobody, including Amazon or other big cloud services, will have no clue of who you are. So the whole idea is just to bring to the public a European search engine, and a European search engine who works in the US too, in India, or even China, because I don't take the data of French, European, Americans, or Chinese people. And the whole idea here is just to give you access to the web, an ethical web, and a web who is for you, not using you for I don't know what.
So if we could get the lights. Yes.
Thank you.
If we could get the lights so we know if folks are, so where the microphones are. I know there's one there, one there, one there. And if you don't want your photo, there's one way up there, right? Where is it? Right, right. All right, I will actually begin by asking the first questioner to introduce herself.
Oh, who am I this morning? I'll be Wendy, okay? So I have, I want to say thank you to Lorrie for the wonderful keynote and the wonderful dress. Thank you for the panel. So this is all the panel, but it was sparked by Lorrie's keynote. You have a team of students, wonderful work, fabulous, and fabulous diverse team you have there. But you have a team of students reading all these policies. Immediately says to me, right, how can we best use artificial intelligence in this? Right, issues of natural language processing. I've long thought about there must be a way in which we can do this, but there are dangers as well as advantages. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we actually, yeah, I have a mic. We actually have a project at Carnegie Mellon called the Usable Privacy Policy Project, where we have been for several years now trying to use natural language processing to parse and understand privacy policies. We actually found it's really difficult because privacy policies are so difficult for even humans to understand that, that machines have no chance. We also have tried to use crowdsourcing, and we found that difficult as well. But we are making progress. And what we have been able to do is to use combinations of crowdsourcing and natural language processing to identify the different components of privacy policies. And we have a list of some of the things that people are most interested in knowing from privacy policies, and we can then try to find those facts in a privacy policy. So we do have a website where we show our labeled privacy policies, and we have a data set that we actually invite other researchers to use as well. But it's a work in progress. We're not quite there where we can just have that completely automated at the moment.
Yeah, well, we have a H2020 project to try to do this through AI, so trying to understand what the website you will visit wants from you. So we are working a lot on it, and we are doing AI on this, and we are a search engine, so we do natural language processing every day, and we have very powerful AI capabilities and GPU capabilities, and we are working with INRIA and others on that field. So I hope we end up somewhere, but I will be very, very happy to add you and others in that kind of study, because it's complicated. And it's complicated in purpose, because if it was not done that way, it was a very simple things to go through. For example, my privacy policy page, it's one page, the letters are very big, and it's very simple. So if everything was like that, it was a 5 minutes study.
Great. Gentleman in green at the middle.
Hi, my name is Ted Drake, and I'm from Intuit. I've got a question about IE, because you mentioned that Internet Explorer used P3p from 6 to 10. What's going on after that? In that battle in 2012, is that sort of, did they cede to Google saying basically P3p is dead, or what's going on?
Yeah, so my understanding is that at Edge, which I guess has replaced IE, does not have P3p in it. Yeah, that's all I know.
Okay.
I would just add something. Every time that the W3C does something great in that field, or every time that we do something to block or stop ads who bothers you, everything has been forgotten in purpose in each new browser for, your good. For years it was for your good. And 2 days or 3 days ago, Google CEO says that GDPR is not a problem anymore, because to make some ads inside of a search engine, you don't need to know anything about you. But that was 2 days ago. For the last 7 years, it was for your goods that they track you. So P3p has been forgotten because it's better for the usage of your browser. Okay, that was what they say in 2012, because you need new browsers, you need better browsers. Okay? This is bullshit.
Gentleman who does not want to be photographed at the mic in the middle there.
I think I'm the, I was just trying this out. I hadn't noticed anybody else using this, so I'm trying out. I'm not crazy about not being photographed, but I want to test the system. So I'm testing both the orange mic and the orange lanyard. We'll see how they work. How they work for next time. So Lorrie, the P3p story is really interesting. It's fascinating in that so much energy goes into trying to get everything right, and a lot of it works. And for the first time, we have machine-readable sort of legal stuff being actually working in the browser and so on. And I don't think anybody expected Microsoft to turn it on by default. I think a lot of people, the implicit assumption was the browsers will leave it off by default, and the servers will, the companies will implement it, but it will be left for the crazy users to turn it on. Maybe I'm misremembering that assumption people had, but then Microsoft turned it on by default, and it became very, very real. And then where the place that it ended up, as you describe, is that you can put something in your web page that says, "Here is my privacy policy," and then the privacy policy is garbage. It doesn't parse. If you had a pointer to a human-readable one, you said, "Here's my privacy policy," and it was complete gobbledygook, then I can imagine there would be legal ramifications. So I think there's been a lot of breakage in the world because people have put things, spammers have found that if they put completely fictitious email addresses in from fields of email addresses, there's no repercussions. Whereas if they sent paper mail with completely fictitious from fields, then that would be fraudulent. So is there a mismatch? Are there lots of cases of this where people are saying things in bits which have a meaning, they're actually being fraudulent, and do we need to have somehow, for the legal and regulatory world, to be much quicker to read the standards and to say, yeah, and say you are saying something just as though you had said it, is there a gap which we could close, which would help all kinds of these technologies to become and help the police crack down on all kinds of stuff, which is in fact fraud, which at the moment they just wave their hands over because it's bits. What do you think?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question. When we were developing P3p, we were actually afraid of exactly this. And people said to us, well, is a P3p policy enforceable? Like, are you going to enforce it? And we said, well, we're the W3C. We are not a regulatory body. We can't enforce it. So we called in regulators. And I remember we called in regulators from the United States and from Canada and Germany and France and many other jurisdictions. And we said, what would you do if somebody lied in a P3p policy? And they all said, we would do exactly what our authority allows us to do when someone lies in a human readable privacy policy. And we said, great, that's perfect, that's what we want you to do. And so then when this happened, I sat there waiting for those regulators to step up and do what they promised they would do, and none of them did it. The best we got in the United States, there was a class action lawsuit against one of these big companies, and it got thrown out of the courts for some technicalities, and so it never proceeded. But the regulators didn't do anything, and I have asked them, I haven't gotten a good answer. So I think this is a problem, and I think this is going to be a problem for future technologies if we don't figure out a solution to it.
I think in Europe it will be a little bit different, and I don't know if you know, Europe are not so good for technology. I'm joking. But not so good for B2C big giant. But we are #1 in regulation in the world. So that's true, you will see. And in Europe, some of this kind of giant has been condemned by the regulator several times at 150,000 euros. It's not a lot, sure. Now it's 4% of the total turnover. So it will be different. And if somebody is catched with 4 billion or 10 billion fine, then
yeah, if the European regulators will step in for a computer readable policy. I mean, I think we actually had in writing from the German regulator that they would enforce P3p policies, and then they didn't do it. And so I don't know why.
All right, gentleman in black over here.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Groth, Elsevier Labs. I was really compelled by the Security Behavior Observatory as a method, and I was wondering how you recruit members and what you compensate them for, and how do you guarantee the privacy of what you observe? Thank you.
Yeah, so we recruit people through a number of different sources. There are a number of mailing lists and forums for people who like to do studies, and so we advertise there. We have had companies that will call people and ask them to participate in studies, recruit for us. We compensate people, I think it's about $10 a month for participation, and anytime they have to fill out a survey or like the initial enrollment, they get paid more because there are more things that they need to do. When people enroll, they have extensive consent agreement, and we ask that if there are multiple users of their computer, that everybody who uses the computer has to read the consent. And we actually have, one of our research assistants has a phone call with them to make sure they understand what they're getting themselves into. So we're not trying to hide what we're doing. And then as far as actually protecting their data, we're of course very concerned about that. So we have set up an infrastructure where, first of all of the data that we collect is encrypted both while it's on their computer, while it's in transit, and while it's on our servers. And we have a server infrastructure where once things are delivered to our server via the internet, they are immediately moved to a more secure server, which is very restricted access. And then our research assistants who analyze the data can only access that data while they're on campus, and we have multi-factor authentication to access the data. So we've put in a number of provisions in place because some of this is sensitive data. We also don't put the name of the person with their data, things like that. But even things like we have these hashes of passwords. So it's hashed, it's great, but we have enough information that a determined attacker could actually reconstruct some password information. So we want to make sure that they won't have access to that data.
Gentleman over here.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Pavard from Aalto University in Finland. My question is about the economics of privacy. Do we have any good data on how much users are willing to pay for privacy, either in terms of money or time spent reading privacy policies, or perhaps accepting an alternative service? And I ask this because is there a way we can make an economic argument to these companies to say, here's something users are willing to pay for, you should really make sure you are protecting their privacy, or do we need regulation to step in and say users are not willing to invest enough, we need to regulate?
Well, from our research, we found that people are willing to pay, but not very much. And so, there is a cost in terms of figuring out how to get better privacy, and often that cost is too high. In our Privacy Finder study, we had people purchasing basically $10 items, and they would pay about 60 cents more. But I can't extrapolate from that. I can't tell you that if it was a $100 item, they would pay $6 more. My guess is no. But we only tried the $10 price point, and that was one point in time 10 years ago when we did it.
You're running a business.
Oh, and, yeah, I'm running a business based on privacy. So, first of all, there are several things in your question, because I perfectly understand that answer. But the truth is, today, there's a lot of people who are ready to pay if it's a privacy-based cloud, for example. You don't want your data to be collected and distributed without knowing. Some of us does, they don't care, we have seen Facebook recently with good ideas of how making cash with you. But the whole idea behind that is the fact that if you start running a cloud privacy-based service and really a securized service, then people will pay for that. Already, every day. Then, if we talk about search, and if we talk about privacy, the fact that you can start trusting your search online without being the subject of the search, give to that search engine sometimes very good users who are there, even if we are not perfect in some countries, they come for that. So we make cash out of it, right? And so it's not always to pay for privacy. It's what is the difference between treating your customers well, ethically, or using them to make the maximum of cash? So you can make an economic out of privacy today. The problem is, what is real privacy? What is fantastic with that kind of introduction and the keynote was privacy, like the privacy mode in your browser. Everybody thinks that's great. I mean, the privacy mode, fantastic. Wow. So it's a lot of things that you need to know, and it's complicated. And it's why I think that there is a lot of space for services who make it simple. Ghostery, it's a proof of trying to simplify trackers and what they do, what they know about you and what they do for you. Why there is so many users of Ghostery? Search engine, since Facebook, we get a traction of 20% growth by day for 15 days. Why there is so many people who try to go on a privacy-based search engine? And then for the cloud, let's come back to big giants, Microsoft. Microsoft 365, you know, the one where your Word, Excel, and everything is online. Okay, before they start to apply very strict rules, it was complicated for Europeans to think that they will be in the cloud of Microsoft. Today, it seems that a lot of companies start to go to that cloud too, because it seems that it's perfectly a follow obligation of European clouds. I don't know if it's totally perfect. I haven't gone in that field deeper enough. But what I see is every time a company does that kind of things, the result is very different. And look at Brave and the idea of using crypto to give you rewards of using a browser who take care of your privacy. Or look at Tor. No? I think that there is a fantastic economy behind that, a fantastic one, and it will be very soon everywhere, not only here, everywhere.
Is there someone up at the no photo?
Yes.
Yes.
So, first of all, thanks for your keynote and the panel. The first thing I would like to mention is that I found it really awkward and disrespectful how Tim was testing this privacy microphone, and I saw several professional cameras photographing him, taking pictures. I hope it was just a discussion that was agreed upon previously. And then I would like to thank this conference and Mozilla for giving the orange badges and this privacy microphone as well. And I would like to also say in Firefox, they have backported from the Tor project third-party cookie isolation. It's in some secret preference, you can try it out. And also container isolation and, for example, Facebook isolation. There are add-ons for that you can separate your sessions more easily. So it's some alternative also to private browsing mode. You should check that out if you're interested. And for email privacy, for example, mailbox.org, they charge €1 per month and you get your email privately. There are also some other email companies to provide that. So I think we already have a lot of choice. Thank you.
Fabian, I think, wants to say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My apologies. The photographer had just made a joke. He perfectly understood and didn't take any picture. It was just to make the joke. Maybe it was inappropriate. My apologies.
Merci. And we'll stay at the mic here.
So hi, I'm Natalia Belova from INRIA. So in the web privacy research, there are different research doing different things. Like Lorrie explained that she's doing really great research on usable privacy and privacy policies. There are other people working on web tracking technologies and try to understand exactly how people are tracked on the web. And then we have regulators, like in Europe we have GDPR and e-privacy regulations that are coming up. So it looks like there are these three actors, like the trackers, the users, and the regulators. So as a web privacy research, that's the question for Lorrie, like where do you think we should go? Should we like unite all the efforts, or what are the next challenges that we need to solve there?
Yeah, so I think privacy is a very kind of interdisciplinary area. So, you know, I've been focusing on the user side, but it's also important to look at the back end and what's going on with the tracking, as well as to look at privacy-enhancing technologies, which may use new cryptographic techniques and different sort of mathematical functions to actually provide some types of privacy guarantees. So I think we need to do all of these things, and increasingly we have privacy conferences where it brings people from these different domains together to try to work together to address some of these problems.
Thank you.
So we have time for two more, so we'll take the gentleman who's been waiting here and then the one who just stepped up.
Thank you for the talk. Martin Resch from Rakuten. I was wondering if we now start charging for the services, wouldn't it mean that some people, if they have money, they have a right to privacy, and if they don't, either don't have right to privacy or they cannot access the services?
I can, yeah. Sorry, but I think it's not true. I really think it's not true because you're right. If you have some money, you can try to get access to privacy, but let's talk about stars. If you are Orlando Bloom or Leonardo DiCaprio today, try to get privacy offline and try to get privacy online. It's complicated, very complicated. So you're right. We should not be, and you're totally right on one thing, even if you are poor, you should have the right for privacy. This is human rights. It's not a game, it's human rights. And so human rights means we need to have services who take care of your privacy without knowing you. You can be rich, you can be poor, you can be in the middle, you can be anything. You should have the right for privacy because it's a human right. Okay, so that means that don't think that rich are totally easily capable of privacy now today online, because we have a session explaining how to get 15 minutes of privacy online. 15 minutes, not 365 days a year, not every time, not just 15 minutes. Try 15 minutes of privacy online. You will see it's very complicated. You can be rich, you can be poor, you can be everything you want. You still need to be very, very skilled in privacy and start to forget a lot of services. Because, for example, when the services, even if you are rich or poor, end up with the new policy for GDPR, and the new policy is, okay, you have now make a photo of your face, it will be better for recognizing you in over photography and take care of your private life. And at the end, it ends up like the best choice. Okay, you don't want to accept this new policy, you have other choices, click here, you click here, and then it ends up with a fantastic pop-up saying, okay, get out or confirm. This is a choice? This isn't a choice. This is not GDPR. GDPR is right to have the choice. Okay, so you can't be a search engine and pay 8 billion to be in the launcher by default and oblige everybody to say yes to the search engine just to access a phone call. That's not a choice. And that is for everybody, just because they put check on the table. That's not possible. This is not choice. This is not the capability for you to choose if you want or not to be tracked. That's not GDPR at all. I hope this year we will prove that you can have the right for privacy, even if you are rich, even if you are poor, in Europe. For the rest of the world, I have understood that they don't want to apply normal human rights to all of you. So for the rest of the world, try a VPN in Europe, and so you will have maybe some protection.
And we have time for one more question. So this, I'm sorry, will be the last question.
Okay. Jean-François Bramatic. Just a disclaimer, I was W3C chairman when P3p was launched. So, and my question is about lessons learned, right? So there's been 20 years, so Lorrie in her keynote presented a lot of the facts that came along since this was launched. And the last comment from Lorrie was she talked, or the team or whoever talked with the regulators, and they commit to enforce, and they didn't. And so my question is about lesson learned. Why do you think they didn't do it? Is it because they lied? Personally, I don't believe it. Is it because they didn't know how to do it? And I think this is closer to the answer, but I'd like to hear yours.
So we'll all take this one, and I'll go first, because I think I have the least interesting thing to say, but there is something I want to say. And by the way, I also participated in the P3p effort back in the day, chairing one of the subgroups.
Thanks, Marie-Hélène.
Merci, Jeff. At the time that P3p and compact policies rolled out, I was security architect of one of IBM's initial SaaS offerings, Lotus Live as a cloud. And as chief security architect of an early cloud, I had the authority and responsibility of reviewing anything that happened, content or computer code for security and privacy issues. And I distinctly remember the day when, only as an aside, I discovered that one of my web developers had been having problems with IE and had twiddled some HTTP headers he did not understand, and got IE to work for the next version we were rolling out of our cloud service. I was the only person in the place who understood that he had just made legal obligations on the part of our professional service, and so was able to stop it and say, no, you can't do that. You need to go look at what our privacy policy actually is. So I have some sympathy for the fact that at least then there was a large divide between the part of the organizations that wrote the human language privacy policies and the part that wrote the computer interpreted ones. It was, at least back then, a difficult thing to keep in line. All right, who wants to go second to last?
Well, so I think that the regulators, I don't think, lied. I don't think they purposely said one thing and did something else. I think it was very difficult for them. I think most of the regulators, their privacy staffs they're understaffed. Having spent a year working for the U.S. privacy regulator, the Federal Trade Commission, there are many more cases that are brought to their attention than they have time to go after. And they viewed this as kind of a little obscure technical thing that wasn't where they decided to prioritize and put their efforts. I think generally, though, this whole notion of using P3p as a self-regulatory model where there wasn't actually regulatory teeth behind it was problematic. And I think we did not have the incentives in place for companies to want to participate. They were very excited at the beginning because there had been a focus on privacy from certain regulators. And by the time we finished the standard, the regulators were looking at something else, and so the companies, said, why should we do this? And the regulators were busy enforcing something else and weren't spending their time on that. And so I think fundamentally having these self-regulatory privacy standards, we've been trying to do this for over 20 years now, and sadly I have to conclude that they get us a little bit, they move the needle slightly, but they don't really get us there.
Eric, would you finish this?
I will love to live in that world, a world of just lawyers and technical people. But there is a world in between, the world of the people who are there to do lobby. And if you look at the time, it was 2012. 2012 was the start, 2010, 2011, 2012 was the start of pre-targeting, retargeting, and all these things. So it was the worst time ever to try to add policies in ads. We started Qwant in 2011, so at that time in 2013, when we relaunched the first version, everybody was explaining to me that if I don't retarget, resell your data, resell your information, keep it, try to retarget you and add and pre-target you, I will make zero cash, zero, ever. And if I have a privacy policy which doesn't help us to get a lot of data, I will not be able to do AI, I will not be able to give you answers, I will not be able to make cash at all. That's bullshit. We do cash, we do AI, we do privacy, just because we don't want to do more than enough to deliver a service. And so don't forget that the people who does the lobby are very, very active, very active. And the people you are fighting against are the people who are making the maximum of cash on that planet. So it's not only you and the technical thing, it's you, the technical thing, and the lobby that they are ready to do to stop some regulators to act, because they will explain to them that that will stop technology, that will stop capabilities for tomorrow, that will stop a lot of other things. And now, it seems that they can even do cash, even if the GDPR is in force, and it seems that you can have some privacy and still make cash. But for years, it was not the case. It's complicated because they play a bad game to try to stop that kind of normal regulation because they want more cash. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lorrie and Eric, for an excellent privacy discussion.
We have also a question on Twitter that will be the last question.
Oh, no.
Yeah. On password managers in the cloud, a too risky single point of failure.
Yes. So, yeah, a lot of people have concerns about password managers as a single point of failure, and especially in the cloud. I think it's, security is a question of managing risks. So most people who don't use a password manager have a small number of passwords that they use over and over again. And we know that that is very, very risky because once attackers get one password, they'll then try that password for your other accounts. And chances are you might not even know that one of your accounts was breached, and therefore your other accounts are at risk. With a password manager, if you use one of the well-known password managers, if that does get breached, you're going to know about it. And so I think it's a much more manageable and controllable risk. So my risk balance says that's a safer thing to do than to reuse your passwords everywhere. Now, on the other hand, if you can keep your password manager not in the cloud, or you can keep your password manager actually on a piece of paper locked away behind a key that only you have, yeah, sure, that's even less risk.
And we will release a piece of software called Mask, M-A-S-Q, by Qwant. The idea is to stop that idea of adding a login and password and start using it on your mobile with encryption and a lot of things, and use peer-to-peer instead of cloud to give the data between all your devices. Why not coming back to peer-to-peer, forgetting the cloud? We have 256 giga on quite all our cell phone today. Tons of things can be saved directly in your pocket. But if they take your cell phone and you give your PIN number, then it will be more complicated to protect you. But I think it's more private than the cloud.
Great. Merci. All right. Are we done? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for this very interesting panel.